Hi, I'm Pat Graham. Welcome to Parent Helpline. Today we are going to be talking with Georgia Winson, who is the Operations Director for the Autism Project here in Central Illinois. And I am very excited about this. I don't know a lot about autism, but I know that 1 in 500 children have autism in some way, shape, and form, and it's very important to us. So, Georgia, do you want to start by just telling us what is autism?
Yes, Pat, you're right. Autism, once thought to be really rare, is not a rare disorder. It's actually fairly prevalent. Autism is a neurological disorder that usually manifests itself around age 2. So parents begin noticing changes in their child about 18 months to 2 years. Autism actually comes out in the form of social deficits and problems with communication and some unusual behavior patterns, specifically repetitive patterns of behavior, such as rocking, twirling, strings, just various types of behavior we call stereotypic behaviors that become really focused and routine.
And that's probably what I would have thought of if you had mentioned autism before. That's kind of your classic, what we first knew about in the 70s.
That's right. And that one is what people are most familiar with. What people often don't know is that there are 5 kinds of autism, because autism is a spectrum disorder. Classic autism, which we've just discussed, is often seen in people who maybe never develop speech. 30% of those folks don't develop speech. A good proportion of those people have some level of cognitive dysfunction with classic autism. But we also know about Asperger's disorder, which is actually a milder form of autism. Those individuals usually have normal IQ and often are very verbal. But they still have communicative problems, even though they're very verbal and can speak very well. And in fact, these children often speak early and speak a lot.
So you think they're very bright, which they are.
Yes.
And that nothing could be wrong.
That's right. But what people begin to notice is even though they speak quite well, they don't know how to communicate. They don't understand give and take of social interactions. And what they often do is begin to lecture people.
So they communicate, but it's not appropriate.
Yes. It's not that give and take back and forth. These children often develop very circumscribed interests. They'll have a love affair with trains or dinosaurs, and they'll be the little person in first grade that comes up and gives a lecture, that is more befitting maybe a 6th grader, but will really talk about this one topic.
Because they're kind of fixated on that one thing,
Yes.
and they can't learn enough, and they can't
Yes.
talk about it enough.
That's right. And so you can see as these kids with Asperger's mature, the social problems become more and more prevalent and actually affect their self-esteem, affect their relationships with others.
Because kids don't want to play with them, because they don't want to be lectured on, and they don't want to hear about trains all day long.
Yeah. These kids, it's really a task for kids with autism and Asperger's to learn better social skills. And we have found that these kids can learn these things. They can learn to communicate. They can learn better ways of interacting socially if they're treated early. There are a couple of other forms of autism that are even less prevalent than classic autism or Asperger's. One of those is childhood disintegrative disorder. And this disorder is really very painful for parents because these children have a longer term of normal development, and then parents begin to see that decline. So parents,
now, when you say longer, are you saying like up until grade school? Or
sometimes childhood disintegrative disorder begins around age 2, but the progress of it can be slow. And so, it can be much, much older that children are diagnosed with that, 6 years or later. So parents, you get past that point where you were terribly worried, is everything okay with my baby? They feel like everything's fine. And then the child begins to lose skills. Another form of autism that's on the spectrum, but some people think is not really as closely related to autism, is Rett's disorder. And unlike the other forms of autism, Rett's is only seen in girls. Most autism spectrum disorders are much more prevalent in males. And Rett's disorder is very interesting. It's characterized by an unusual motor movement, and these individuals have a hand-wringing motion that develops, and they appear to be almost anxious at first. And there are people who just lose complete ability to use their hands. And these individuals, all women, also have cognitive deficits and have problems with communication and daily functioning.
And this comes on during childhood or later?
Yes, it does come on during childhood as well. And then the final category under autism spectrum is what we call PDD-NOS, a pervasive developmental disorder not otherwise specified. It doesn't fit any of those other criteria, and it's often less severe. Yeah, it's the other category.
Okay.
Autism, when I think about how autism affects little children, you have to think back to things about your baby or your toddler that you may not have even recognized.
So one of the things that parents need to do is to really know what normal development is.
Absolutely.
That's where we start, you know, because a lot of times I think a new mom or a mother of six
yes.
forgets what normal is. So it's very important that we do know what normal is.
That's true. I think it's important for parents to know what to expect with children, and it's also important for the people that interact with the parents to listen closely to them. One interesting thing about this, even parents who maybe don't know the developmental ladder, are very in tune to their children, and studies have shown that parents are often the best diagnosticians. Most parents of kids with autism are seeking some kind of help by the time the child's 18 months old. They're asking questions.
Because their baby isn't doing the same thing that their friend's baby's doing.
Yes. And you know, these things that children with autism don't do are very subtle. One of the most important cues is something called joint attention. By 18 months, almost all babies do something that we all loved. One of the things they do is they point to something in their environment, or they show interest in something in the environment, and they try and engage us in their interest. So it's not just to have us get them something, it's to say, look, Mommy, that's beautiful, or isn't that interesting? And so they will look at something in the environment.
They want to share that discovery they're communicating.
Yes, that's right. And that is something that is missed in people with autism. And so that's one of the first cues. And it's hard for parents to describe what's missing. But they often say to their physician or to a daycare provider, or they talk to someone and say, something's just not right. He doesn't respond to me the way my other children did. So that's one of the first cues. And, it's
that could easily be dismissed by a doctor and just say, you know, it's fine, everything's appearing to be okay to me today.
Yeah, because it's not something the doctor would typically see in his office. One of the things the project's really working to do is to try and train